ladies and gentlemen. It's Modern Investing Show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and today we have a guest, Dr. Milan Sambarak. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me. Delighted to be here.
And also, we have the producer of Pod TV, Mark Lee. Welcome to the show, Mark.
I'm glad to be here. Glad to have this conversation.
Great. So we are now in the middle of a correction. So therefore, the law that on Wednesday stocks are moving higher doesn't work in times of correction. Although in the morning there was a attempt to sort of have at least one up day, and seemingly it doesn't work. So the market is down, not a great deal. I wish it would be a great deal, and I wish it would be very speedy capitulation of people who are, if you look at the tape, you see that everything is down. As gold is down, stocks are down, everything is going down. And this is the greatest way to entice total capitulation. And once that will occur, the market will resume its upward movement. Of course, all this budget talks and failure to achieve anything, and there will be most likely a shutdown of the U.S. government. That doesn't bode well for the stock market as well. So hopefully all these factors together will contribute to a steep decline of further 20, better even 30% in the next few days. So that will equal to total capitulation, because very few people would be able to withstand that unless they will bring more money to their margin positions. And as great William O'Neill suggested, never ever pay the margin call, sell. So if people would listen to that advice, they would sell already a couple of days ago. However, they want to fight it. Welcome to the brave world. Milan, how you are facing this dilemma?
Yeah, a couple of interesting things. Year to date, the American market, as represented by the S&P 500, is up 11%.
Right.
Year to date, the Canadian market, as represented by the Toronto Stock Exchange, is up about 0.5%. However, the U.S. and Canadian central banks have never raised interest rates so quickly to such a large extent without causing a recession before. So
Yep.
We're looking at a recession. Now, you were saying earlier today, Sasha, how the market is supposed to be up on Wednesdays, but nothing works all the time. Actually, there are four things that work all the time. One of them is dollar cost averaging the entire market, not individual stocks, the entire American market. The second one is buying securities when a company is buying back its own shares. They always go up. The third one is the correct use of derivatives. The telling word there is correct. And the fourth one is picking stocks. And that doesn't work half the time, but it works for people like you because you are a genius. You are a Mozart in the market. For most of us, that doesn't work. And the average investor trails the market by 40%, even though we can teach a high school student how to equal the market in less than 5 minutes, less than 3 minutes. So we're looking at a recession. When I take a look at the put-call ratio on SPY, which represents the S&P 500, which is an accurate representation of the American market as a whole, rather. The put-call ratio is negative for the month. It's negative for a year from now. That is telling us that most investors feel. That's exactly how investors feel. As the put-call ratio shows. They have a negative feeling about where the market is going to be a month from now and where the market is going to be a year from now. And that's entirely based, I believe, on the fact that central banks have never raised interest rates this quickly to this an extent without causing a recession before. Now, definition of a recession is 2 declining quarters in a row. A definition that I like better is a recession is when the neighbor is out of work, and a depression is when I am out of work. So, So
Okay.
that's my take on where things are today.
Based on our previous experiences with market downward, it's quite obvious that the steeper decline is, the faster and more decisive recovery. So the V-shape decline is actually the most beneficial tool because it's very steep, very quick, and then market recovers. Now, there are some other types of declines, for example, like 73, 74, where market quite steeply declined, and then it took 2 years slowly get out of this. I don't think that this is in store simply because of the advance of computers and computerized trading. So all processes are much faster. The decline is faster and the recovery is faster, or so on. But this is basically what we have to deal with. For example, the way I dealt, remember that I was last week, I was mostly in cash. The only two positions I had, it was AMD, which is went down, but it nicely recovers today, even in a down day like today, but it went up quite nicely. And another position, Netflix, which trying to recover, but so far there's nothing much happening. However, I sold deeply in the money calls, covered calls on both stocks. So I've received a premium. I've protected my positions. Netflix calls are expiring actually this Friday, and most likely they will become worthless, which will allow me on Monday sell next calls. On AMD, I sold 98 October calls, October 20th. So I may, depends on what AMD is doing, I may will have to buy them back and sell next probably January or even March calls to generate even more income from that. That allowed me to initiate a new position on CM, which stands for Imperial Bank of Commerce, Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce. Now, that stock in the last few days went down. It's now trading at probably, I don't remember, 38 change, 38.40. Now, in last year, it was as high as 48.71, and it was as low as 38.40, which is today's price. Now, remarkably, it pays 6.45, so almost 6.5% dividends, and you can sell covered calls, which I did. So I sold, I'll tell you which ones. I sold, okay, CM. I sold March 15th, 2024, 40 calls at $2 each. And now they're trading at $1.65. So I can now generate $1,000+ the profit. But I'm not going to do that because what I sold at $2. So if I bought stock at $39, so now my downside is $37. So my actual price, what I paid for the stock, is only $37. Now with this call, I'm exposed to stock being called away at 40 plus 2, which is $42. So I will make profit of $3 per share, which is quite significant. Very low risk because we are now at the lowest point in a year. So it may go another maybe 50 cents, even dollar lower. But today is actually a remarkable day. Stock goes ex-dividend. So those people who bought it a couple of days ago, like I did, or even today, they're eligible for the next dividend payments. And with 6.5%, with options available, I think it's pretty low risk deal. Milan, what's your opinion on that?
When the market is declining, you are well off to be in cash. You were in cash pretty well last week. You couldn't do much better than that, but actually you could, because when the market is declining and you're in cash, whenever you're fully in cash, you cannot write covered calls. You have to buy the security in order to write covered calls on it. And you are not selling cash covered puts either, because you're in cash. So while being in cash is safe, a safe place to be.
Milan, with cash, you actually can write cash covered puts.
You can, yeah, that's right, yeah. But the thing about, you mentioned the CIBC, there's short-term thinking and long-term thinking, and we should all be thinking long-term.
Not necessarily. It depends on your objectives. It depends.
Well, yeah, that's true.
There are several factors.
And we are also not long-term.
Absolutely.
What is long-term? But people who have held any of the Canadian banks for the last 30, 40, 50 years have done very well. Canadian banks have done very well for their investors. And, when I was in practice, I had a number of patients, wealthy widows, who were given a lot of money by their husbands, and much of that was very frequently in Canadian banks, and they paid no attention whatever, because they didn't know how to pay attention to market movement, but all they did was cash in their regular dividend checks and lived very comfortably. Whether you live comfortably or not depends on the size of your portfolio and the dividend checks, of course. But these ladies were doing very well without paying any attention to the market, simply by cashing in their dividend checks. And I think that that's something that you pay a lot of attention to, Sasha. You pick stocks that pay dividends. The difficulty with doing your way of investing is that it requires a lot of time. And people like the members of Monday Morning Millionaire, and we have about 300 members, half Americans, half Canadians, and many of them are dentists. And most of their income comes from what they're doing, come from their work, from their job. So they don't have the time to spend. And so doing what we recommend, number one is save. If you don't save, the others don't count, and there are 5 others. The second one is do it yourself. You don't need to hire an advisor. Advisors don't work very well at all. A record of advisors over an extended period of time is very poor. When you take a look at the S&P 500 versus active investing, SPIVA, the vast majority of money managers cannot equal the simple act of holding the U.S. market as a whole. So being in banks is good, being in dividend paying stocks is good. The trouble with your approach, as far as we are concerned, is that it takes a lot of time. And so that can be a lot of fun. We have a man who's got a portfolio of about $10 million, and he's got 100 securities in it. And when we ask him, why do you have so many? He says, because it prevents cognitive decline. I have to pay so much attention to what I'm doing here that it prevents cognitive decline. Well, probably any activity which taxes the mind will delay or prevent cognitive decline. He could play chess, for example.
You can play chess, or I know a lot of people that are involved in fantasy football for exactly that reason, because they definitely have to keep track of the athletes and all along those lines, so that might be preventing their cognitive decline as well. But one of the quick questions that I had for both of you and everything is, because you kind of mentioned it earlier, Milan, and everything, is there are a number of people that are, and then maybe it was Sasha that mentioned it, that are trying to find ways to invest, and they're using the technology, whether that's Robinhood or whether that's things that are doing the money management for them. There's a program called Mint that I know a lot of people use, and I think people use Acorn as well. So just wondering y'all's thoughts around that, and whether those are valuable tools or whether they are not valuable tools, because a lot of people.
I would ask any of the people using those tools is who is on the other side of whatever they're doing. If they are buying, who is selling? If they're selling, who is buying? People using these tools are doing that. And so it's the same thing as individual investors. When an investor buys any security, he's buying it from somebody who is selling it. Can they both be right in the short term? In the long term, it's possible that they could both be right. And I'll give you some examples of that if you're interested. But only one can be right in the short term. So it doesn't matter what tools you use, whether you use artificial intelligence to help you pick your stocks or any of these approaches to investing. You're selling to someone who is buying. You're buying from someone who is selling. Could be the market maker, but usually it's some individual. You cannot both be right. Now, who would go? How frequently are you right? You're right 50%.
Hi, Jim.
Jim, how are you? What happens is when you're buying from somebody and somebody is selling, one of you is right, the other one of you is wrong. Who would drive a car knowing that there is a 50% chance of an accident? None of us would.
None of us are going to do that. But Jim, the question I'd asked him, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as well, is a lot of people, when they're thinking about investment, they're going to tools like Robinhood, they're going to tools like Mint and everything along those lines. So, and as Milan was pointing, there's got to be people that are managing those tools as well. So they're probably controlling what is going on. I can tell you that the reason, in my opinion, a lot of people use those tools is because we as humans are naturally lazy, and we like to do the simple way of doing things. And so it's simpler to do it if it's being outlined out for you and all along those lines. But that's just my thoughts around it, because I do know some folks that are, doing their investments, and Robinhood is just one. There are several others as well. But I was just wondering your thoughts around these tools that people are using in that investment lane.
Well, that's a great question, Mark. My experience, and I apologize for my lateness. My computer is being very, very uncooperative today.
Accepted.
And I'm freezing now.
No, you're so good.
Okay, good. So yeah, I don't recommend using any of those tools because there is an invested interest in whatever they're trying to get you to buy. And
it's not your interest; it's their interest.
Absolutely, Milan. And it's you never know whether they're pushing something for some reason other than what's best for your portfolio. And the idea of being lazy, I understand that, and I just think that making you're getting experience in the market is not as time consuming, and it's not as I think what people are afraid of is intellectually too challenging for them. And I've not found that to be true. I found that people can learn very quickly. Milan is a proponent of being able to teach a high school student in 12 minutes and how to invest. And I think there's something to that. I think you can get to be a sound investor with a minimum amount of effort. And it's not something, I think you can demystify it for the average person. It's not rocket science.
James,
and don't buy what other people are trying to sell you. Learn what's best for you.
Jim, Warren Buffett's mentor, Benjamin Graham, would totally agree with you. He said achieving satisfactory investment results is easier than most people realize.
Yes.
Achieving satisfactory investment results. Trying to beat the market is not easier. In fact, it's damn near impossible.
Yeah, that's the thing, is to be satisfied with a modest return, and a modest return can be quite valuable. I mean, it really can add up over time. This is the thing that people I don't think people understand well enough. If you continue to invest and continue to make money over time, you end up with a great deal of money. And if you're in it long enough and doing it soundly, the market has provided a great deal of income to a great many people for a very, very long time, and you can be one of those.
Hey, Jim, along those same lines and everything, isn't part of the problem that exists is that people are looking, whether it's the lottery or whether it's whatever, for the quick fix and everything. Absolutely. I imagine, because the stock market, I'm going to mention a stock market item that is out there now. I imagine that a lot of people are about to invest in sports. And I'm going to tell you why they're going to invest in sports, because two agencies just got together. That was the WWE, which is wrestling, and Ultimate Fighting. And they put together, and you can look it up on stock market ticker, TKO. That's the name of their ticker. And I imagine that a lot of people are going to be looking at that and going like, hey, it's sports. I know sports. I'm going to invest in that and everything because they're looking for that quick fix of something that they feel that they know. And like I said, I know nothing about wrestling. I know nothing about Ultimate Fighting. And I imagine a lot of other people that will be invested in this particular company know nothing about it either, but they're going to be like, hey, it's a major two entities that I know, therefore I'm going to invest in it. Could I have a point, Milan?
Gambling in the stock market is entirely possible, and a lot of people do it. You know, you can gamble from your living room without having to go to Las Vegas by behaving the way that most people behave, by behaving the way that investment banks want us to behave. Investment banks are primarily a selling organization. They're into selling. They don't care whether you make money or not. If you make money, that's lovely. But if you don't make money,
you'll buy more.
they're still making money. So really, Wall Street is not our friend. I keep saying all the time that Wall Street is not our friend. If as an example, today, yesterday's paper, Wall Street Journal published an article about J.P. Morgan being fined in the millions of dollars for supporting Jeffrey Epstein and misbehavior. And so the investment banks budget for fines. They know that if they push their luck sufficiently, someday they're going to be nailed. So they budget for that the way that you might budget for your municipal taxes or whatever. Maybe you don't do it formally, but you know you need to have some money set aside for municipal taxes and for groceries and for various things. If you want to take a holiday, you have to have money set aside for that. They budget in the millions for fines because they know that they will be fined sooner or later for misbehaviors of various sorts.
Milan, how we can benefit from this information?
Well, you benefit from this information. You benefit by avoiding all the recommendations that they give. We need Wall Street in order to complete our transactions. Whenever we buy or sell, we need Wall Street in that. And in that respect, they serve a wonderful function. They keep accurate records. Most of us don't. The cost of transaction is close to zero. I mean, the cost of transactions they're buying and selling is so low you can totally ignore it. The constantly quoted prices are very valuable. You don't have to get an appraiser to see how much your house is worth before you sell it because they constantly quoted prices. That's valuable. And then ultimately, I don't know whether this is number one, all these count, is the total liquidity. Total liquidity.
But wait a sec. I agree with everything what you're just saying. My question was how we can benefit from the fact that they were fined billions and tens of billions of dollars. I mean, it's irrelevant to us.
Sasha, we don't benefit from that. Where do they get that money to pay those fines? They get it from you and me.
Not me. I don't know about you, but not me. I have a low-cost discount broker who keeps accurate information, who provides very good liquidity and prices, and I don't care about J.P. Morgan, whether it's $10 million,
let's say, Sasha,
hundreds of millions of dollars. I really don't understand where you're coming with all that. Should be interested in that.
Instead of saying where did they get that money, and then I said they get it from you and me. They don't get it from you. They get it from
Jim, are they getting any money from you?
Are they?
No, but Sasha,
you.
You know, I've been investing in the stock market for but only the last 20 or 30 with confidence. Prior to that, I behaved the way that Wall Street wants me to behave. I picked stocks, which is right half the time. Nobody would drive a car knowing that there's a 50% chance of an accident. I traded frequently because I thought that would be beneficial. It certainly is not, but it does benefit Wall Street. So they constantly encourage behaviors which result into their benefit, not to yours and mine.
Milan, but you were one who were making decisions to buy stocks and buy more and sell more. It was you who provided them with that liquidity, with that capital that they're paying now in fines and so on. If you wouldn't do that, Jim is not doing that, I'm not doing that, Mark is not doing that, then what do we have
investors are doing that, not you.
Let them do it. Listen, Milan, but you cannot stop millions of people who
No.
do that. You cannot stop them. Let them do it.
They have enormous influence. You know that Wall Street has so much influence that it can influence what is taught to our students at MBA programs. The MBA
That's a wonderful point.
the MBA programs, which are supposed to put people in a position to manage money and to understand money very well, they present to the students what Wall Street wants them to present because they have so much influence.
That-
Yeah, along those same lines and everything.
Fight that. They cannot restructure the education system in the United States. They're not there, and it's not our role. We have to provide people with our own experience, what we do in the market. If we are making any mistakes or we are making the right moves or whatever, that's what makes it interesting. To talk and generalize about JP Morgan, Milan, give me a break. I think it's for a different program.
Mistakes should be practice shots. If you're not making enough mistakes, you're not pushing your luck sufficiently.
Once again, I agree with both of you. The idea being expressed here is like what Mark just said about okay, WWE and martial arts are combining, and
Right.
TKO is a new thing that they're being sold. So don't buy it. This is the message I think Milan is trying to tell us. You know, don't buy what they're selling you. So these are the types of things. It's I know. Say I know martial arts. Say I know worldwide wrestling, but do I know how the companies are run?
Exactly.
Different.
Again, whenever somebody recommends any stock, I immediately put it on my screen, even if it's Yahoo Finance or something like this, and I'm always looking, is there opportunity to sell it short? That's my first. Can I sell it short? If yes, I will do it. If not, I will go to next stock. I will not touch it.
You know something, Sasha? There are people today making money, making buggy whips because they manage so well. You know, we hardly ever check management. And really how well a security does depends more on management than on anything else. So, you know, you could be in a hot area, in a poorly managed security is not going to do very well. And if you're managing well, you can sell buggy whips today and make money. There are people, the Amish people and Hutterites and so on, who are still driving horses and buggies, and they need buggy whips, and somebody's making those buggy whips.
Milan, if you manage well, you can also get by with what they call damage control, and all along those lines. The person that actually founded WWE, I think that's Mr. McMahon, is almost like Mr. Trump. He's got all kinds of issues that have happened in his corporation, including some sexual abuse kind of charges and everything, but he's made millions off of that company and all along those lines, and he's definitely managed to get by with the damage control, even though he was exposed in some of these situations and everything, but he's managed to make millions, if not billions, and now he's merged, and it'll probably be even more amounts of billions because the company's been around for about 40 or 50 years, so they've definitely been around for a number of years and all along those lines. But the question I had for Sasha, and it's actually for everybody here on the panel, is later on this evening, there's going to be a debate. It's a Republican debate and everything, and I'm thinking that half the people up there on the DIASs and everything will have no knowledge of the economy. They will have nothing, and I don't plan to have the expertise that you three have, but I think that they will not have that much expertise. How important is it for the leader of the free world, assuming that they are going to be that person, to have some knowledge of business? So they have like a requirement that they have to have some economic knowledge and everything. I mean, maybe Nikki Haley's got some. She did run a whole state, South Carolina, so I'm sure she had to balance a budget at some point.
Mark, what about this? What's his name? Vivek Kamasutra.
Vivek Ramaswamy. Yes, he ran a business as well, so he might have some business knowledge also. But
really, all his business experience is actually swindle people out of their money, because essentially some people believe that he's a scientist. You know what is his education? He is undergraduate student in biology, and he's made millions of dollars by buying a patent from English company with the 4 clinical trials when busted. They lost all 4 trials, and he bought it for a song, put it in a public company which he controlled, and that company was very soon was valued at $3 billion with no product, no sales, nothing. So finally they did fifth clinical trial, and the result was the same as first four. The stock went all the way down very quickly. It went to zero in a few months. That's type of people together with the main crook, Trump. Although Trump probably is not as educated as Vivek, because Vivek is undergraduate and Trump is not. And also, oh yeah, by the way, Vivek also, he made a degree, law degree. So he would understand how to structure his companies, how to swindle people properly without going to jail. So he learned that. So this type of people are in the debates. Oh, come on, give me a
I
break.
know.
You know, a
I
couple
know.
of,
It's a good point that people should understand if they're running for office, and especially running for president. They should understand the economy. Very few of them do, and so that's what we struggle with: is how do we separate the people that do from the people who don't? And people always say, "Oh, we need a business person in as president," and you know, these business people can be as the biggest crooks you can imagine. And I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, "Oh, it's just business."
you know what, Jim? One of the best presidents that the United States has ever had was Harry Truman. And Harry Truman
Yes.
failed in business more than once. We have forgotten about the fact that Henry Ford had 5 bankruptcies. And
Walt Disney had 7.
sorry?
Walt Disney had
Well, then, we forget about that fact. You know, a couple of things. One is that whatever direction we're going in, a computer will help us get there faster. And that includes criminal activity. And the other thing that I don't understand is how is it that somebody like Trump can get so much support? You know, there are 2 things we can learn from the Chinese. One is they drink their soup. We should all drink our soup. It's a lot easier than using a spoon. 2 is the higher up any individual goes in government in China, the tougher the tests they need to pass. You know, in Canada and the United States, crooks and thieves can become presidents. There's lots of examples of that. In China, you can only go up higher by passing increasingly difficult civil service tests.
Milan, do you know why they drink their soup? They run out of spoons.
Oh, come now. And chopsticks don't work. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, this business of having to qualify before you run for office is something that we should imitate. I mean, the founders of democracy, and I think Plato may be included, Aristotle, Socrates primarily, founders of democratic government, would not be happy to see the way that we run our democracies today.
I agree.
Where crooks like Trump can get elected. How does he get so many votes?
Milan, there is a great difference between election in ancient Greece and today's USA. Today is in USA, any idiot can vote.
Yes, that's right.
You say 50% of the people are idiots, you have a result, Trump, a president, and so on. In ancient Greeks, a lot of people were not allowed to vote.
That's
It's
true.
only free citizens of Athens could vote.
That's right.
For example, the slaves, they were not allowed to vote.
Of course, that's true. Yeah.
So unless US will, and here I agree with Adam on the program of politics, that he's making a case that there has to be voting reform in the United States, that not all people automatically get the rights. People who have no idea about geography, about the United States, they don't know how the Congress is functioning, or Senate, or even US presidency. They don't know nothing. All they do, I want to vote. Okay.
Excuse me, Sasha. Knowing about the way Congress operates, is that not taught in elementary schools?
I'm not sure.
We used to have civics, and that's been abolished pretty much.
Really? What was the reason to abolish that? Don't people know?
It was a long time ago, and it was for reasons that I don't remember. So I can't educate you about that, but I do know it was a mistake because I think civics is a very important lesson for any citizen
Yeah.
to learn. So I'm sympathetic to what you're saying. I just don't support it. I don't think there's any way that we will. Right now, we're trying to discourage people from voting for all sorts of nefarious reasons. So I'm more afraid of that than I am of foolish voters.
Yeah, and
We're always going to have foolish voters, and they're always going to be influenced for the wrong reasons. Go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say, Jim, part of what happened was also kind of and y'all have alluded to it a couple of times, the Disneyfication or kind of the culturalization of the whole world and everything, because definitely there was a very popular film, well, kind of like semi-commercial, kind of semi-PSA that used to come on and everything that was educating people about the bills and everything. And while I approved of that, and I thought it was a great thing, it was like junction, what's your function as a whole schoolhouse rock kind of thing. They kind of simplified it, and then they didn't leave it in the schools as well. They left it in the schools and also used that as a supplement. I think that would have been better, but I think that they kind of used it as a tool, but they didn't necessarily keep it in the schools, to your point, Jim, and everything. So they need to do both.
Who's trying to educate you is also always the question.
Right.
Because you read, anyways, the whole question really comes down to, in economic terms, that's why we've elected more governors than senators, because if you have a senator, do they know anything about running anything? Have they been an executive anything? But if you have a governor, at least they've run a state. And so so we tend to trust them a little bit more. But you're absolutely right. And Milan's pointing out with Trump, how do so many people support him? Well, they get the same facts from the same sources constantly. And these are alternate facts. And so these facts, in quotation marks, are repeated to them on a daily basis. And everybody that they know listens to the same thing. And they talk to everybody they know, and they hear the same thing. And so these things, how do you fix that? That's my question. And I'm not saying that it's not out of the question to require some way of like determining. You give a license to drive. Would there be a license to vote? I'm not totally against that. But right now, what we're trying to do, too many people are trying to do, is control who gets the vote, and makes it very difficult for some people to vote and very easy for others. And these are for nefarious reasons, and I don't support that at all. And how are we going to clamp down on them, on the people doing that? And gerrymandering the regions, all of this stuff is done to stay in power. And how do we deal with them? That's first and foremost. Getting to the citizens to be more educated. That's a good goal, but it's not the first problem that I see we need to solve.
Jim, I think that a major issue right now is that there is we are at the crossroads in the United States. What is taking over, whether it's judicial system, which found Trump guilty in one case, 91 indictments here and there. That's
fraud.
What we have on one side. On the other side, we have public opinion, which has been artificially influenced to believe that Trump stands for freedom, for happiness, for
the everyman.
America great again, election was stolen. And you don't have to really go in deep so much to explain each point. Election was stolen. Again, that's all what you need to say, and he will say the same thing for next year and a half, or actually slightly over a year, and he will be elected just on this too.
I know.
So
stop the steal, and were said by the people who were stealing trying to steal the election.
So basically, what we see now in the United States is the judicial system, for many reasons, is not really working. Furthermore, he's threatening openly the jurors, the judges, General Milley, chief of staff, and so on. And it goes without even comments. Nobody even comments on that because people are paralyzed by this Republican thugs who can attack your home, your family, and destroy you and they all have to hire bodyguards and so
Yes.
on. This is a country where it's all happened, and judicial system is paralyzed. It cannot do anything. So this is a horror of Trump becoming president again. Now it will be his second and final term, and he will do with the country anything what he wants. And he can do a lot of things.
Yeah.
This is where we're all going. And unless Democrats can unite and explain the danger to independence, and they will find that it doesn't matter, okay, so Biden is not healthy enough, he's too old, or so on, but this is much lesser evil than healthy Donald Trump.
Hey, coming back to economics and everything, it's a modern investing, and there's a major investing core that exists as well. And I'm wondering if it's the same thing in Canada, because part of what goes on in the United States, and it also ties into politics, is 30% of your funding or 30% of your income is supposed to go no more than that to housing. And that is a major issue, and all along those lines. So I just wondering, are y'all having a housing problem in Canada as well? Because that is a major issue here in not just North Carolina, but throughout the United States, because there are a lot of people that are homeless and a lot of people that can't afford an apartment, much less a home, and all in that space. So I was just wondering, is this an issue that also exists in Canada?
We have the same problem in Canada, and so some solutions exist. We had a member of parliament from Barbados meet us over the telephone. Our mayor in Collingwood was there, and he, the Barbados parliamentarian, actually is an oral surgeon. He practices oral surgery half a day a week. The rest of the time he is in government. And he said that the thing that can improve housing is the following. When a house builder puts the shovel in the ground to start building a home, shovel in the ground, he is already half done. Everything that precedes the shovel in the ground is paperwork and regulations,
Permits.
so permits, all these things, and that can be rationalized. That should be rationalized so that that part shrinks. The building after the shovel is in the ground will take just as much effort as before. But everything preceding it, the shovel in the ground, everything preceding it is paperwork and bureaucracy, which should be rationalized and improved and minimized. You know, Thomas Jefferson wanted to see minimal government. The idea of minimal government died with Thomas Jefferson, didn't it? So 50% of the population in the United States and in Canada works for the government, which spends money in the worst way imaginable. I mentioned before that people were robbing graves in Egypt. They would rob graves. People were buried in Egypt, important people, with a great deal of wealth, which was going to serve them in their afterlife. The grave robbers took that wealth out of the ground and put it back into circulation. Society benefited from what they were doing. So could we say that society here benefits from people who cheat on income taxes? Because you and I will use that money more effectively than government will. So it could be argued. And so we have to, the housing crisis now, maybe I'm going outside a little bit here. The housing crisis exists here, but there are potential solutions. For example, many people are working from home. Downtown towers are empty. The bank buildings that reach up to the sky could be converted into residences. It'll take a lot of work, of course, but much less work than starting from scratch. The other thing is containers. You know, these ship containers that are used, those could be converted into very nice homes without a whole lot of effort. So the possible solutions exist. We have to implement them.
You know, I agree with you on that and everything. Hey, Jim, I don't know if you know this, but there was a major tycoon, a business tycoon that is thinking about being mayor of San Francisco, and he was actually bringing up the homeless issue because he is part of the Levi Strauss family and all along those lines. So I don't know if you've been following him and thinking of what his solutions are, but I did see that he was definitely talking about those issues because it's very big in California.
It's San Francisco to me is so depressing right now. When I moved to California, it was a beautiful city and I loved it. And now the downtown, everything's boarded up, and there's the homeless problem was getting worse, but it's continued to get worse. And I know that the current mayor is under a lot of scrutiny and and the scrutiny is mostly producing negative press. And but I don't know what the solution is, because what Milan is talking about is, the businesses have gone. So those down in the financial district, which supported all these other things like the drugstores and all the other types of things that were around them, the Starbucks and all that kind of stuff, and the Mechanics Institute Library, for example, which is right downtown in the financial district. All of these buildings, these towers being empty now means that there's no business. And so they're boarding up the stores. And all these wonderful stores are no longer there. And
Jim,
so who goes there? No one but the people who have no homes.
Jim, you're describing what's happening in San Francisco. Can you tell us why it's happening? San Francisco used to be one of the most attractive cities.
Absolutely.
Why has this developed?
And
Why has it declined?
And it's still beautiful outside of the financial district, which is right down in the Market Street, right downtown. That is a shell of its former self, and it's so depressing to go to there now. And the why is that because primarily COVID caused people to work remotely, and so all of this remote work took all of the people that were bustling. It was a bustling downtown out of the downtown.
Right, yeah.
And so then the companies start, they were trying to get people to come back in, and there was a great deal of, hey, wait a minute, why do we need to come back in? And they didn't. So what we have now is empty buildings and a lack of just, population going to and from their like BART, which is the public transportation, which I used to take downtown into the financial district every day. And then you could walk to your office. And along the way, you would stop and buy a Starbucks or something like that. And all of that's gone.
Yeah, Jim, along those same lines, what do you think about, because there was a whole movement and it used to exist, I think it still exists, around this notion of buy local and all along those lines. So is that a good movement, and are we encouraging enough of our small business owners and all along those lines, whether it's in California or North Carolina or wherever? But I do remember there was a very popular buy local movement that was out there for a while, and I think it even existed in Canada, where they were trying to support the local small business owners.
It's still really a big deal here. There was a book in the 60s called Small is Beautiful. And I signed up to that, and it might apply to everything, including government. But, the idea is stay local. And what we do now, we have farmers markets and those types of things. Everybody has those types of things. But we have a lot of built in, like you can order someone to bring something right to your doorstep now that's locally made, and this emphasis is very important, and it works when the community buys in. And when the community does not buy in, when everybody is shopping on Amazon, then it doesn't work. So
okay, how much does buying local save us? That big screen TV that almost everybody has. You have a big screen TV in your house, maybe more than one. It's made in South Korea. Do you know what it costs to bring that into your house?
It's the shipping that's probably the biggest cost.
Yeah, the shipping is the biggest cost. And the other question I had, even around buy local, and I'm part of a buy local program, and I love it when I can afford it and everything. But I'm part of it's called Produce Box here, and you buy local food. But I can tell you that it is not as cheap as maybe going to the grocery store.
I never got a chance to finish what I was going to say. To bring that TV into your house costs $3. $3, not $300. $3. That's the cost. We can ignore it now. We are so used to strawberries in February. We are so used to having every fruit and vegetable available
year round.
Yeah, you're going to rob yourself of that to buy local.
Yeah. You're right.
If you look at a report of Costco, which was yesterday, I would think that all the idea of buying local is pretty much dead. Costco is providing highest quality food, brand names. Most of the names are their own under Kirkland.
And we shop there. I have to admit.
Nobody can fight it. Even Walmart has.
It's not just Costco's. It's also Sam's. It's also there is a one that is Latin American based that I know my dad has used several times. It's called Compare. Compare is another one. So there are several of them like that that are very popular, and they're those membership kind of programs.
And also, ask yourself, where are they? Where are they physically? They're in places where people have money to spend.
Right.
Absolutely.
They're not in poorer communities. So the poorer communities, once again, have food deserts. They don't have access to these things that are year-round. Strawberries in February.
That way, the middle class still prefers shopping at Costco.
Absolutely, I agree.
They can buy quality, top quality products at reasonable price. It's not cheap. I'm not saying that Costco is cheap, but the quality is second to none. So you can buy almost any Kirkland product.
About cheap, let me mention about cheap. We in Canada spend a smaller percentage of our income to buy groceries than anybody on the planet except the United States. The average Canadian spends 10% of his income on food. In Egypt, it's 50%. In many other countries, it's much more than that. We spend a lot compared to what it used to be, but compared to the rest of the world, the United States and Canada spend very little, 10% of average.
Milan, it might be 10%, but I can argue that because I know quite a few folks that are probably spending closer to 20% on their food because they are eating out way too much and all along those lines. So I don't know where the 10% figure comes in, but I do know quite a few folks that if you looked at their budget and you looked at where their money was going, it is going to food sources, whether that's a restaurant, whether that's dining out, whether that's what y'all just mentioned earlier, DoorDash and all along those lines. But I was going to ask Jim really quickly. I know that here there are some very popular markets that I think were also popular in California, and they were kind of like the ethnic markets. And some people don't like the markets because they are sometimes seen as being too noisy, too messy, not as clean or sanitary as some of the others. But I do know that whether it's the Chinese markets or the Asian markets or whether it's the Indian markets or even some that are Latin American markets, you can find some pretty good deals in some of those spots. And some of those are in those food deserts. But I didn't know if that was the same case there, Jim, as it is here in North Carolina.
Yeah, and especially where I live, you have no trouble finding any kind of ethnic. We were depressed. My wife and I were just talking. The Asian market in downtown Menlo Park, where we live, just closed. But I think that is partly due to the pandemic again. So many things have just, we walk by the mall, the Stanford Mall, which is, walking distance from us, and it's unrecognizable. But most of the stores now are very high end.
Jim, do malls exist anymore? Because every time I see them, they're like those kind of like bigger, like ultra malls. So they're either ultra malls.
Nobody can afford
these other kind of things. But like the smaller mall, I know that is the last one of our smaller malls, but there might be one, but Northgate is gone, South Square is gone, and a number of others are being converted into like these kind of ultra malls and all along those lines. So I don't know that the small mall, which used to be a popular destination even for our kids.
Yeah, it's unrecognizable. It's very true. It's another transformation that's occurring in the country that you don't talk about a lot, but it's happening.
Will we be better off 5 years from now than we are today?
I don't.
For all three of you.
No, I don't think so, because the property prices are rising. I have 2 grandchildren, and so far I even can't imagine how they will be able to buy a house or a condo or just anything. Well, right now they're in universities, okay, but they will finish universities, they will start their jobs, and how are they going to afford it? When you have, let's see, even to buy a 700,000-800,000 condo would cost them 20% down payment. It's right there. They have to face a down payment. For example, okay, so I will help them. Their parents will help them with down payment, for example. Then they have to assume mortgage of hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes.
This mortgage and so on. That's not viable. But what I want to mention is yesterday I had very interesting experience. Nava and I, we went to Italian supermarket with the name Cataldi. It's about 45 minutes drive, but somebody recommended that. So not only I discovered fantastic place to shop, good food, good prices, uh, very nice cafe inside. It's surrounded by very picturesque homes, condos, townhouses. It's like you imagine yourself in the middle of a European city, which has a market square. They
Uh-huh.
have a lot of very nice shops, mostly Italian shops, and it's all surrounded by very nice apartment residences or so on. And people shop there locally. Of course, they're not going to drive 45 minutes as I did yesterday, but they enjoy their shopping, their time. They're not in a hurry, and
Ah, you're
there's
describing a different world.
yeah. I found yesterday myself in a different world altogether, and I I don't know about the property prices in that area or so on, but it all looks so peaceful, so beautiful. I almost started to envy the people who live their lifestyle and maybe even to move there. Who knows one day? Uh, but that's very interesting experience.
My question was, will the next generation be better off than we are today?
I don't believe so.
You believe so? Now, Sasha, you realize that millennials stand to inherit more money than anybody else, any other cohort in history ever has inherited.
Yeah, but the prices will go so high that even this quantity of money will not help them much. Okay, the services are getting sparse and far below. When we came to Canada 40 plus years ago, the services which abandoned in abundance and
Mhm.
so high quality. The way of life was different. You could leave open door to your house
Yeah.
and nobody would go.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Hey, Milan, let me ask you a quick question, and it'll actually maybe answer your question to me and everything. I have said on this show, and I've said it several times on Pod TV, I've got two nephews. Right now, they don't have any need for dental operations or anything that I am aware of, and all along those lines. But let's just say that they are 14 and 15 right now, and they were to need something in 10 to 15 years and everything. What would that cost be? Because I'm thinking the cost is going to be so high that they probably will not be able to do it, and all along those lines. So that's my concern with the next generation, because I've seen the prices steady go up, including necessary things like dentistry and medicine and other things as well.
Well, the medicine is not a problem for Canadians, as you know.
Yeah, I know.
Well, dental help cost you some money. Why, Milan? I even go as far as suggest what our family dentist suggested several years ago, 10 years ago, most likely. He suggested that every Canadian, when he's 20 or over, he has to completely get rid of his teeth, put implants, and use implants until the rest of his life without ever going to cleanup, to dentist, to anything. And that all will be taken care of nicely.
When I was in practice, we saw implant patients every day. I would have loved to see that happen.
I'm sure you would have loved to see that happen, but Lon, you would have made even more money to invest in the million.
To restore a patient completely with dental implants costs between $50,000 and $80,000. So the government should pick that up.
Well,
The government doesn't cover dental costs in Canada, Milan, as I know.
And Sasha, I know we're winding down, but just to answer your question, there are neighborhoods like that even here in Durham, North Carolina. Like one of them is literally near the Ultra Mall that I was talking about. So, but one of the things that happens is it also gets people to become more insular and everything, because they wind up staying in those neighborhoods because of what you just said. They got the medical places nearby, they've got the stores nearby, they've got everything else nearby, so they don't necessarily need to come into what would be considered the main city or everything, because everything is like what you just described. And I know that there are neighborhoods like that even here in Durham, North Carolina. As a matter of fact, there's one near South Point, which is our major Ultra Mall, and all along those lines.
and there are a lot of gated communities too.
Yeah, lots of those gated communities.
Well, is that, Milan, you want to...
Our architects are talking today about 15-minute communities. That is, you live in a
Yes.
tower of some sort, and in 15 minutes you can walk to the library, you can walk to the grocery store, you can walk to where you work, you can walk to the medical office, you can walk to any place in 15 minutes or less. Vancouver actually comes very close to that right now.
Yeah, it's a great walking city. Yeah.
And so we should be targeting that instead of doing other things. That 15-minute communities make a lot of sense because more people are living in cities now than ever before. More people living in cities than on farms. We used to mainly live on farms, but about 10 or 20 years ago, more of us are living in cities. 15-minute communities make a lot of sense.
Yeah, the times of old MacDonald had a farm is already passed by. Well, with that, I would like to thank you so much, everybody who participated today in the show. And we'll see you next week, same time, and hopefully with the better news.
So,
Thank you.
For inviting us.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.